Okay, we now welcome on to the show Senator Matt Canavan, Minister for Resources and Northern Australia. Welcome to the show.
G'day, guys. How you going?
It's our first minister, I think, James.
Really? I think so.
We've had a few parliamentarians, but
okay.
so no swearing. No
Okay.
misbehaving.
Yeah. No, it's a family-friendly show, right?
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So everyone on their best behaviour. All right. But people that haven't been on their best behaviour this week have been people outside the International Mining Resources Conference here in Melbourne. Now, you're coming fresh from that conference, so do we need to dry you down from any spits?
I was very fortunate to have the very efficient and diligent services of the Australian Federal Police. So avoided all that. But good luck to them. They can always welcome people protesting, expressing their views. But obviously you've seen that the from the news at least, that many arrests. Problem here is people. You can't. You just because we've got free speech, it doesn't mean you can run around, break the law, and now with some of the protests we've seen, prevent other people going about their days. People getting to hospital. It's this is a massive dummy spit, right? These people are upset because they wanted a different result of the election. I respect their views and opinions, but I also respect democracy and the people spoke.
The best dummy spit for me are the people that have started gluing their hands to the ground. That's people that really haven't thought that through.
No,
there's so many things you need to do.
They haven't actually. One thing they really haven't thought through, and I've looked at this in detail now, is that modern superglues are made from petroleum products.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
It's great. Like the one of the very first. I came up with this when one of the very first people who did this, these glue backs, as Tim Blair calls them, they glued themselves to Queen Street in Brisbane. And, in Brisbane's hot day, so I presume lying on a bitumen road for a few hours, not very comfortable. I haven't done it before. But so they'd thoughtfully, these two people, had brought along some of those mats, those rubber-like mats you get from Bunnings and you clip together and stuff. They'd brought those along to lie on.
Oh, really?
And as soon as I saw it, I thought, I wonder what they're made of. And I Googled it and that. And it's they're EVA foam. And so they're ethylene acetate vinyl.
Oh. That's going to kill
ethylene vinyl acetate.
Yeah.
And it's made from petroleum. So they're lying on fossil fuels, campaigning that all these fossil fuels should stop. It is beyond parody, these guys.
Yeah, but it does look good on Twitter. So we need to remember
that's all you need.
Let's start with those guys, right? So these are young people. They're in the city. To them, you are just like absolute poison. You're a national. You're from Queensland. You love coal. How do you go about convincing those people that fossil fuels are a good thing and that they help people?
Look, I'm not naive. I don't think I'm necessarily going to convince everybody of my point of view, and I'm not asking everybody to. I mean, people are welcome to have a different point of opinion. But as long as there's sort of mutual respect, I don't think we're necessarily going through all that a different period than we've done, in recent generations. I remember when I was sort of formative years at university, it was the Seattle protests. I mean, you guys would be too young for that, but
these kind words. But I do remember the.
Do you remember it? Oh, right. Okay. Well, I thought I was old, but WTO, it was just like this. They had to move trade conferences to Cancun and all these other exotic locations after Seattle because it was just a mess. And that sort of all died down, particularly after September 11. Obviously, the world changed and priorities shifted. So we're going through a similar phase where people are, they've got a certain cause. I was young once, so I thought I was a commie my first year at uni. And as the old saying goes, by the time you're 30, you grow a brain. So things change. But look, as I say, I'm not. There is a task to convince young people and the benefits of resource development and developing our nation. I do think it's a serious task. Some you won't convince, but I suppose there's lots of different things you should say to young people about why we need coal, why we need resources. The fundamental one is the difference coal and resources makes to people's lives. Not here in Australia, because we're very lucky, things are good here, but in the world. And so that's what I spoke about today at the conference, that in the last 30 years, in our generation, how old are you guys?
I'm 34.
Oh, yes,
I'm 25.
Okay, so at least we've got one here that it was alive.
I feel so young in this. This could go on forever.
So when some of us were alive here 30 years ago, in the Asia Pacific region, in our region, we're in that region, 2/3 of people in the mid 1980s lived on less than $1.90 US a day, like $1.90 a day. 2/3, so 2 in every 3 people. Today, that figure is 2.3%, right? So it's basically been removed, extreme poverty in our generation. Amazing thing. Over that same timescale, the use of fossil fuels in the Asia Pacific region has gone up 10 times. and there's no one's invented a way of getting to an industrial stage of development, getting through industrialisation without the significant increase in the use of fossil fuels. And it also, in my view, is a prerequisite to get action on climate change. Countries are not going to reduce their carbon emissions if they're not wealthy, if they can't take care of the other basic necessities of life.
Yeah, because I know that there are definitely some people that are never going to come over to this side, but when you want to talk about things that apply to people on the left and people on the right, which is improving the lives of poor people around the world and improving the environment. When you look at what coal does to poor people around the world, it's amazing. And when you look at nations that do go through that industrial side, actually come out better for the environment for it.
That's
these
right.
are the things that we need to preach.
If you want to see a country that doesn't protect its local environment, you either generally go to a communist nation or a poor country. But I repeat myself, right? They basically, if you're wealthy, countries look after their environment, they look after their backyard, and I think we do a good job. It's not perfect, but we do a good job. The other thing, it does help poorer people and more unfortunate people here in this country too. I was only catching up yesterday with some of the guys from the Wangan and Jagalingou peoples, and they're the people who have the traditional owner rights at the Adani Carmichael mine site. And they met in Maryborough a few years ago now. I think it was nearly 4 years ago now they met to have a big vote on whether to support the Adani mine or not. And they voted 294-1 in favour.
Yeah.
Right? 294-1 in favour. And you've got a whole lot of people on the Labor Party, the Greens, the ABC, who will start speeches recognising traditional owners, the land on which we meet. You've probably heard that phrase. It's very easy to say, but it's a lot harder to respect. And so the ABC always rolls out one guy. He wasn't actually at the meeting. He was in the one vote against it. But one guy, Adrian Burragubba, they roll out to be a spokesperson for the W&J people. And I have never yet seen, someone might be able to point out to me, but I've never yet seen the ABC refer to the fact that the W&J people met and voted 294-1 in favour of Adani. Maybe we should respect their views. I've got no problem with people in Melbourne having a view on the Adani mine, but surely we should give a fair amount of weight to the traditional owners and what they want. They want jobs. That's what I was talking about these people about yesterday. They're working with Adani. Got 10 of their people already on site working with Adani. They're looking for training opportunities to take advantage of this massive investment in their country.
Yeah, but they have the incorrect view. They'll respect it if it's the correct view, but if it's the incorrect view, there's no point.
Well, it's a new form of colonialism, right?
Yeah.
It's like the white man's burden. We've all got to take on for these poor people what they want. We know what's best for them, apparently. I think we should let them decide. And all this talk about a voice at the moment, I respect that I've got a lot of time for Noel Pearson, catch up with him regularly. But before we get to that, surely we can just respect the native title process and the laws we've got, and they give rights, they give property rights to Aboriginal people, and those rights should be respected. In this case, the W&J people clearly want Adani to go ahead, so we should get on with it.
Right. So you mentioned before countries can't reduce their emissions until they deal until they become better off. Do you have a view on nuclear power? Obviously, nuclear power with no emissions, and another source of electricity.
Well, look, I'm certainly open to the discussion. I'll deal with it in general and come back to Australia. It is at the upper end of the cost curve, right? It's not a cheap form of power right now. Certainly not in developed countries, but even in developing countries, it tends to be a higher cost form of power. In the UK, they're building one at the moment, and they've had to guarantee a price of about £90 a megawatt hour, which is roughly, it's over 150, I think now, dollars in Australian dollar terms a megawatt hour. That's more expensive than you guys pay for power, and you pay a lot for power now down in Victoria. So it's not a I think a panacea or a solution for all ills, because you still need affordable power for people to grow and develop. For these developing countries, they're not going to be able to afford to run their whole economies on nuclear, because it's just not competitive and cheap enough to do. And then that takes you to Australia. Well, the problem we got here is, because of decisions that have been made in the last decade, we've destroyed our competitiveness in electricity prices, and we don't have a lot of flexibility here to add a $150 megawatt hour option into our grid. So I think right now it's not the immediate solution. I think we should continue work on it. It will require broad political support, of course. I'm actually trying to get as a resources minister, a location for our radioactive waste from Lucas Heights. So we store pretty much all the waste from that facility at Lucas Heights, 30 kilometres from Sydney, inner city Sydney. it's no problem, perfectly safe. But we're running out of room, and we've been trying to find a site for 40 years. And I asked someone in my department the other day, when did we start doing this? And they said, we think someone in the department is still around when that started. It was during the Fraser administration. So
yeah, long term.
Yeah, so all of us might not have been alive back then. So it's taken a long time to get here. We're very close. We've got a vote going on at the moment in South Australia on it, and touch wood. So.
But surely, with the amount of natural resources that we are sitting on for nuclear, maybe if it's not the most price effective now, it certainly should be invested in going forward.
I'm not saying it shouldn't be on the table. We've ruled out changing the law this term of Parliament. We've got an inquiry on at the moment, House of Representatives inquiry, but looking into it. As I say, I think building long-term support for this requires more than we have in place right now, given how long it would take to build a power plant, the politics around managing the waste. So we just got a few steps to make, and in terms of it lowering emissions, absolutely can do that. But we've made good progress on reducing emissions. I think the priority right now is getting affordable power to people and protect jobs.
The other thing I want to mention about nuclear power is last week on the show, Pete and I discovered that the Parliament House emits more radiation than a nuclear power plant. So I was just wondering, is that something that's concerning to you walking into...
I'm sure the House of Reps inquiry will look very closely at it.
Yeah.
But that's right. I mean, same with if you're a air hostess, you get much more radiation than you would working at Lucas Heights, for example. I'm probably in that category because I do live quite a lot on planes. So it's a naturally occurring substance. And I think Adam Crichton's article today in The Australian is extremely interesting. I don't know if you've seen it, but apparently there's a new economic paper that's just come out that apparently, I can't remember the numbers, but thousands of people have seemingly died in Japan as a result of Japan shutting off its nuclear power fleet overnight after Fukushima, because power prices went up, and they've done some statistical work looking at what people didn't use heating and air conditioning and stuff, and there were increased deaths, weather-related deaths. So that just shows the consequences of these sort of energy decisions we make and getting it wrong, what it can do. So, of course, there's not a lot of clear evidence that Fukushima's led to any exact death. There's a bit of controversy about some of it, but it's not in the thousands. Even the
I think it's much closer to zero.
I haven't looked closely at it myself, but that's my understanding. Yeah.
So you've been described as one of the masterminds behind the election victory for the coalition for attracting blue-collar votes in Queensland. We've seen a bit of a trend globally where I guess blue-collar people have been more attracted to the conservative side of politics, and inner-city elites have been more attracted to the left-hand side of politics. Is that something? Do you agree with that, or is that simplifying?
I can't take much credit, but or most credit goes to Bob Brown, mate.
Okay.
He and there's no doubt Bob Brown had a big influence.
That bus trip really saved the coalition.
Yeah, you guys, you're both from Victoria.
That's correct.
Yeah, so like Queensland, we're quite parochial. To have a little chip on our shoulder, get talked down to. People say we, play banjos and curtains fade and all that rubbish. So
you did bring a banjo into the podcast.
Yeah, that's
only so
right.
many things we can bring.
Maybe next time.
So when people from down south can come up and tell us what to do, there's a reaction, and that definitely had an impact across Queensland, in my view, beyond the coal issue. I sort of call it the ABC election. It was Adani, it was Bob Brown, it was coal. And that had different impacts all over the place. But, I was just looking at some data the other day that the AEC has just released where you can map votes to statistical areas, so small ABS statistical areas, and then you can look at relationships to coal mining employment or jobs. And it's clear it was a high-vis revolution in the election. So mining areas that have above-average mining employment swung to the Liberal National Party much, much greater than the Labor Party. Working class areas did. I was looking at the federal seat of Moreton the other day. I was there at the LNP branch meeting, and it's unbelievable that along the Brisbane River, just well-to-do areas, some young sort of high-density housing in that seat, the swings to the Labor Party, mild swings. Then you go into places like Runcorn and Sunnybank, areas near where I grew up, and these are working class, usually Labor red dead areas, and they had swings of 7, 8, sometimes above 10% to us. And look, that is happening across the world because the Labor Party have forgotten their base. They've forgotten about the people that they were meant to represent. And you know, I feel the natural party of the worker now is the Liberal National parties. You know, we defend jobs, we defend industries. You know, we believe giving people a shot and opportunity in life, and I'm very passionate about that because I want to give particularly young people a go.
All right, I think we've got time for one more. Is that right, James? So I was doing a lot of research for this interview and I went on your website, and the last thing it said was that your dad was disappointed that you gave up cricket when you were 16 to pursue a career in politics, I imagine.
No, not quite, but there's a few steps in between.
What happened there?
Look, I suppose I got to my teenage years and got interested in other things. I was a mad keen cricketer. My dad actually built a cricket pitch out in the backyard. Like seriously, like
what a dad!
He's a boxed up, you know, full 20 meter cricket, 22 feet cricket pitch, and then 22 yards, sorry, and then he started mixing the concrete himself in a barrow. But he got only a couple of metres in. That was, you know, it was crazy. So he got a truck in. But anyway, it was a great pitch, and my brother and I spent a lot of time out there. But yeah, I just got to my teenage years, and I suppose you discover other things, girls and all that. And I got very interested in history. So I had a very good history teacher who got me interested in politics, I suppose you'd say, and economics. As I said, I sort of became a little commie there for a bit. Sorry for my sins. And then you know, yeah, so I went a different path. But I'm back loving cricket and play when I can. But yeah, I never quite got anywhere near the baggy green.
Yeah, so no cricket pitches being built in Parliament House anytime soon?
Well, I will say one thing I'm very disappointed about May 18 is because I had plans. There was a Parliamentary Cricket World Cup in London in July. It was to coincide with the last week of the World Cup. And so when I found out about this in March, I thought, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
You know, my chance to play cricket for Australia in England, and, you know, it's not very hard to get picked for the parliamentary cricket team. And, you know, it's 2 months or so after the election, so I won't be a cabinet minister anymore. I'll have lots of free time. And then, yeah, careful what you wish for. So things got a bit busy. So, yeah, I missed out on that, and that might be it for my career.
So you might be one of those protesters who are still protesting the outcome of the election coming up.
Yeah, well, that's right.
All right, cool. Matt Canavan, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
No worries, guys. All the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.